Hello, everyone. In this video, I'm going to talk through the events of 1646 to 1660. Obviously, this is relevant for the British paper 1. And this is a period of great instability, military involvement in politics, and as it says here, the failure to find a constitutional settlement. I find this complicated. I think it might be the most complex period. Lots of changes happen, and I'm taking this information mainly, although I've used the textbook to put this together, also the book God's Englishman by Christopher Hill, which is all about Oliver Cromwell. And when I read that, it really broke it down for me, and I kind of fully understood this. So a lot of that is actually on Digital History Library, so you can have a look for that, the Christopher Hill book, and I think it will, enlighten you on this period if it is a period that you are unsure about. So I'm just going to talk through the main points, and obviously you can pause the video as I'm going along and take notes. The way you could possibly do this is have a piece of paper and make a timeline as I'm going along with just some key points. The presentation is like a bit of a timeline anyway, but it might be just helpful for you to make some notes as I'm going along. So here we go. So 1660, 1646, but also I'll just talk through how this is going to work. So at the top, obviously, I've got the date. On the right-hand side with the kind of flash, we've got whether there's any war. And then at the bottom is a shape. And as this presentation goes on, the shapes change as the type of parliament, type of government changes over time. So hopefully you can see how things change, and hopefully I'll mention that as I'm going along. So 1646, the Long Parliament is in place. It's the end of the First Civil War. Charles I surrenders to Scots. Parliament abolishes bishops, so you could say that's a move towards Presbyterianism. And as it says here, as the war had gone on, obviously the war breaks out in 1642. There'd been a growing division between Parliament and the army. And within Parliament, there's some ideas of the kind of settlement that they want, and within the army, it's quite different. So I think as a general point, you could say the army are more radical. They want a more radical settlement with things like religious toleration, perhaps even getting rid of the monarchy, a wider franchise, things like that. Whereas Parliament are more moderate. They want to keep the monarchy. Again, this is broadly speaking, but want to keep the monarchy, but maybe have something like a constitutional monarchy. And they want a national state church that's Presbyterian. Okay, so Parliament offer Charles proposals at Newcastle, which is a kind of Presbyterian church settlement, and Charles delays any response. So that's where we are in 1646. So Charles is surrendered, and Parliament making him this offer. He doesn't say anything about it at that point. Moving on to 1647. Scots have had enough of Charles, so they hand him to Parliament. Parliament proposed to reduce the size of the army, and as you can see from that question, how might the army feel? They would not be happy with that. They would not be happy. So Parliament appoint, that should be the army appoint agitators actually in March. That should be the army. They appoint agitators calling for arrears pay. So Parliament say, okay, we'll give you the pay that you deserve, but you can see that the army are starting to get more involved in politics. Cornet Joyce seizes the king, so the army now take control of the monarch, and the army present the king with a new proposal, the heads of the proposals, a new settlement, which is stronger than the Newcastle proposals. Obviously, the king doesn't agree to that. In October 1647, there's a debate between the army and the Levellers, which is a more radical proposal for a new constitutional settlement. That obviously doesn't come to anything, and the reason for that is that Charles escapes to the Isle of Wight. He's soon captured again, but so his escape leads to the end of the Putney debates, and Cromwell kind of quashes any Leveller influence. Charles signs a secret agreement with the Scots, so that's like the final straw. Charles can't be trusted. In 1648, Scots enter England, and this starts the Second Civil War. They're defeated quickly by Cromwell at Preston, and again the army present a remonstrance to Parliament, so they're calling for changes to government. You can see the army getting involved in politics again. Parliament try and negotiate again with the king. They want to kind of get him on side. The army by December 1648 have had enough, and so Colonel Pride, Thomas Pride, goes to Parliament, rids Parliament of moderates. So the army, it's the kind of a military coup. They get rid of moderates from Parliament, leaving a rump of 240 MPs. And so the question here is, what's the impact of this? Well, the impact is that Parliament are no longer representative. Parliament represent the views of the army. It's not moderate, more radical, and basically, the rump, as you can see at the bottom, a change of type of government. The rump are almost like just a puppet for the army. So 1649, because the rump is in place, there's the trial and execution of Charles I. That could not have happened without the rump being formed, without Pride's purge. So you can link that to military involvement in politics. Scotland obviously disagree with this, and they declare Charles II king. The rump abolishes the monarchy and the House of Lords formally in March. So there's now just a single chamber government. The rump begins to sell crown lands to raise money as a way of raising money now. And the Levellers have a mutiny at Burford, which is soon crushed by the army, but again showing the radicalism within the army and the reliance of the government on the army to keep the peace. Cromwell goes to Ireland in 1649 and massacres thousands of Irish Catholics at Drogheda and Wexford. You could say that's kind of revenge for the Irish uprising and for Irish support of the monarchy during the Civil War. The rump raises money through a monthly assessment, which is very similar to ship money. So you can see it's a way of them raising money. And the rump passes 125 acts during this year. So actually quite productive, in terms of trying to find a kind of constitutional settlement. But you can see they're trying to find money, they're trying to quash rebellions, so perhaps not as focused on finding a settlement as they could be. The army is still very much in control of things. 1650, as a reaction to the radicalism, particularly the ranters, the Blasphemy Act is passed, which means that the ranters are imprisoned. A contradictory act, the Toleration Act, is passed as well, which ends compulsory attendance at a national church, and that basically means that the Church of England isn't in place as a national church anymore. There's no single national church, but there is an oath that adults have to swear to the Republic. The rump also passed the Adultery Act, which gives more rights to women in terms of adultery within marriage. Cromwell defeats the Scots at Dunbar, so that's a battle that's part of the Third Civil War. So we're continuing with the rump, going to 1651. The rump passed the Navigation Act, so that's important for topic 4, looking at economic change. The ranters are imprisoned. Royalist lands continue to be sold. The Hale Commission is established to try and change the legal system, again looking for kind of constitutional settlement. And Cromwell defeats Charles II at Worcester in 1651, which is the end of the Third Civil War, but we're continuing with the rule of the rump. So we haven't had any changes to government. We can see that there's still attempts to find a constitutional settlement, but there's these kind of royalist threats. 1652, not as much going on here, but the Anglo-Dutch War begins, the First Anglo-Dutch War, and there's only 51 acts passed by the rump. So you could say they're becoming kind of less effective as time goes on. Obviously, if you think about war, it costs money, affects trade. That's important. 1653, the Anglo-Dutch War is ongoing. Cromwell dissolves the rump because he feels they are not finding the settlement quick enough. And that leads to the bare bones parliament. So you can see at the bottom the different shape. We've got the bare bones parliament, which is officially called the nominated assembly, which is formed of 140 MPs. There's a marriage act, which leads to civil marriages. But the bare bones parliament doesn't last very long. Major General Lambert introduces the instrument of government, which makes Cromwell the Lord Protector. So within that 1 year, we've gone from the rump to the bare bones to the instrument of government. Also, in the nominated assembly, there was fifth monarchists in there, so you could talk about the importance of radicals and radical threat there. So, 1654, we get a new type of parliament, the first protectorate parliament, where MPs are forced to recognise the instrument of government. So, as I said, the instrument of government is a kind of constitutional settlement, and this is what it looks like. So, there's 460 members of this single chamber, and there's a state church, but freedom of religion. So, you're not forced to attend in the same way as you were during the reign of Charles I, for example. There's ordinances against immoral behaviour. So, you can see this is a push by Cromwell for this reformation of manners. Cromwell remains head of the new model army, so military still very important. And but you see divisions here. You know, the nominated assembly want the army to be reduced, which is obviously controversial, and the army don't support that. And we've got the end of the First Anglo-Dutch War. So lots going on in 1654, a new form of government, the first protectorate parliament. 1655, Cromwell dissolves the first protectorate parliament, and there's a royalist uprising by John Penruddock. And what that leads to is Cromwell realizing that he needs some more control over the country. So he splits the country into 11 military districts, each ruled by major generals. So the rule of the major generals, and this is the time when lots of things are banned. This godly reformation of manners, so stage plays, horse racing, Christmas, pubs, football, all those things are banned in this period. And the rule of the major generals obviously isn't very popular due to that. And there's a need for money. There's a need for a new kind of parliament to issue taxation by the end of 1655. But Penruddock's uprising is really the cause of the rule of the major generals. But you can see another form of government there, another shape at the bottom. 1656, the end of the rule of major generals, and there's a new second protectorate parliament. So a new shape there, symbolising that. And then we've got the James Naylor case, which is kind of controversial, where Parliament call for James Naylor to be executed because he's a Quaker who rides into Bristol naked on the back of a donkey to reenact an act that Jesus had done. Parliament want him to be executed, and Cromwell actually sticks up for him under his support for religious toleration, and he ends up being flogged and bored through the tongue in prison, but he isn't killed. So that shows that Cromwell is, to some extent, tolerant of different religious beliefs. 1657, the instrument of government is ended, and the rule of major generals officially comes to an end. The humble petition of advice is presented to Cromwell, where he is offered the crown. He refuses to accept it because of pressure from the army. Obviously, it would be a hypocritical thing to do. So he's reinstated as Lord Protector. And there is a kind of coronation event in 1657 where he's installed as Lord Protector for the second time. And there's also a new House of Lords. So the House of Lords comes back, an upper chamber, in 1657. In 1658, Cromwell dissolves the second protectorate parliament, and he appoints Richard, his son, as his successor. He dies, and Rich Cromwell becomes Lord Protector. On to 1659 is the third protectorate parliament, which challenged the army. that doesn't succeed. It leads to the dissolving of the Third Protectorate Parliament. It leads to Richard Cromwell resigning because he doesn't have support from the army. The army dissolved the rump, and then it's later restored. So basically, what we can get from this, lots of information here, is the importance of the army in all of this, the failure of Richard Cromwell because he lacked support from the army, and then the army intervening again. So General Monk marches from Scotland and restores the Long Parliament. So we go all the way back to the Long Parliament, and calls for new elections, which leads to the Convention Parliament, which votes for the King, Lords and Commons, and then we get the Restoration in 1660. So we go all the way back from all the changes we've had, all the way back to the Long Parliament, then the Convention Parliament, then the monarchy restored. Obviously, the level of detail in this presentation, in this video, is far more than you'd ever use in any single essay. But what I'm hoping you can see in this is all of the different forms of government, the importance of the army in political instability, and the reasons why there's a lack of settlement, whether it's involvement of the military, whether it's radicals, whether it's personal failure of Cromwell. These are the main reasons why, or a royalist threat as well. These are the main reasons why these different forms of government don't succeed. Okay, I know that was a lot of information, but hopefully you've got some key information out of this, and you can see the events, how they've changed. And as I say, you can go back and pause things and look at the information on the slide just to get a sense of how things change over this very, very unstable period. Okay, thanks so much for listening.